Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, making your coffee, turning on the news, and discovering this just seemingly impossible truth about American history.
Okay, I'm with you.
Like, imagine finding out that Washington, D.C., the White House, the crossing of the Delaware, the drafting of the Constitution, none of that actually happened on the East Coast.
Wait, really? Like none of it?
None of it. Imagine discovering that all of those foundational events actually took place in, like, a remote valley in Nevada.
Oh, wow. That's a massive shift.
Right. And the reason you didn't know this, because centuries ago, a group of incredibly powerful individuals simply unbolted the street signs, moved the monuments 2,000 miles across the continent, and just rewrote the history books.
Just packed up the whole national identity and shipped it west.
Exactly. And they basically gaslit generation after generation into believing the new map was the real one.
I mean, it sounds like the plot of a dystopian science fiction novel, honestly. The sheer audacity of stealing an entire geographic history like that.
Right. You would think someone would notice, you know. You'd think the deception would be way too massive to sustain over time.
Yeah, somebody would have to speak up eventually.
But today, we are going to look at a theory that claims someone did exactly this. Not to Washington, D.C., but to the most sacred geography on the face of the earth.
It is a truly wild concept.
It really is. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are exploring something that is going to completely dismantle how you view history, how you understand ancient texts, and really how human beings construct reality itself.
Yeah, it's definitely going to shake some things up for you if you're listening to this.
We are dedicating this entire conversation to a truly provocative, groundbreaking framework laid out in a text titled The Geography of Truth, Reclaiming the Original Covenant.
And, I think it is vital that we set the parameters for this exploration right out of the gate.
Oh, absolutely. We need ground rules here.
Because the theories we are going to unpack are revolutionary. They run counter to, well, pretty much centuries of traditional historical and theological consensus.
Exactly. So I want to be crystal clear with you, the listener. Everything we are discussing today, every paradigm-shifting theory, every radically unique translation of ancient Arabic, every sweeping geographical claim is attributed entirely to the exhaustive analysis of one single scholar.
Right. Dr. Khaled Waleed.
Yes, Dr. Khaled Waleed. We are essentially stepping into Dr. Waleed's mind for the next hour to view the ancient world entirely through his incredibly specific lens.
And Dr. Waleed's lens is utterly unique because he is looking at the Quran, specifically the second chapter, Surah al-Baqarah, not just as a book of moral or spiritual guidance.
Which is how it has been read for, what, over a millennia?
Exactly. But he's not doing that. He's reading it as a literal, physical, geographic map.
A GPS system, basically, designed to fix a hijacked reality.
That's a great way to put it.
But before we get into the map itself, we need to understand how Dr. Waleed is actually reading this text. Because he's not just, opening a book and pointing at words randomly.
No, not at all. He has a very rigorous system.
Right. He has developed a highly specific methodology to, in a sense, reverse engineer the scriptures. So can you walk us through the primary analytical tools he uses to build this framework?
Certainly. According to Dr. Waleed, there are two foundational tools you have to grasp before anything else makes sense. The first is a concept he calls cognitive geography.
Cognitive geography. Okay, I want to pause right there because that sounds like an academic buzzword.
It does sound a bit dense, yeah.
What is the actual mechanism of cognitive geography? Like, how does it work in practice?
Well, it is the idea that physical locations on the earth and mental or spiritual truths are permanently, inextricably linked.
Linked how? Like they just happen to be in the same place?
Stronger than that.
Yeah.
In Dr. Waleed's view, you literally cannot separate the truth of a historical event from the exact physical coordinates where it occurred. The geography holds the cognitive weight of the event. It is an anchor.
So it's not just this monumental event happened. It is this monumental event happened exactly here, and the here is fundamentally part of the what?
Precisely. To use your opening analogy, the truth of the American founding is permanently tethered to the physical geography of the East Coast.
Right, because of the rivers, the specific weather, the ocean access, it all matters.
Exactly. So if you convince someone it happened in Nevada, you haven't just moved the location in their mind. According to Dr. Waleed, you have fundamentally destroyed their access to the underlying truth of the event itself.
Because truth requires spatial reality. If the space is wrong, the truth is void.
Yes, that is his argument.
That is a heavy concept, the idea that truth has a physical address. So what is his second tool?
The second tool is what Dr. Waleed calls linguistic mechanics. And this is where his work gets deeply analytical.
Okay, linguistics mechanics, what does that entail?
He treats ancient Arabic words, specifically within the Quranic text, not as loose flowing poetry, and definitely not as flexible metaphors.
Which is how religious texts are so often treated, right? Like, oh, it's a metaphor, it's just poetic imagery to teach us a lesson.
Exactly. We tend to soften ancient texts in modern times. We make them abstract. But Dr. Waleed hardens them.
Hardens them? What do you mean?
He treats these words as interlocking gears in a complex machine. Every verb, every preposition is a very specific mechanical function designed to build, or as he argues, to rebuild a physical spatial reality.
Wow. So when the text gives a command, it is an architectural blueprint, not a spiritual suggestion.
That's it, exactly. It's an instruction manual for reality.
Okay, so we have cognitive geography, which says truth is locked to physical space. And we have linguistic mechanics, which says the words of the text are the physical gears used to align with that space.
Right. Those are the two pillars.
So if we apply these tools to Dr. Waleed's framework, what exactly is he trying to rebuild? Let's get into the crime that necessitated this map in the first place.
Well, according to Dr. Waleed, to understand the map, you first have to understand how the original map was broken.
Okay, who broke it?
That takes us directly into the first major pillar of his work, the crime of transcription and the engineering of an alternate reality.
Right. And Dr. Waleed points directly to verse 79 of Surah al-Baqarah as the primary evidence of this crime.
He does. It's a foundational verse for his entire theory.
For you listening, the standard translation of this verse usually reads something like, "Woe to those who write the book with their hands, then say, 'This is from God,' to purchase with it a small price."
Yes, that's the common rendering.
Now, when I hear that, my mind immediately goes to textual corruption, plagiarism, some corrupt ancient priests scratching out a rule they didn't like, or adding a tax to make a quick buck.
Yeah, the traditional historical and theological interpretation has almost universally focused on textual or ideological corruption.
Like changing the words on the page.
Exactly. The idea that scribes, monks, or rabbis altered the scripture to suit their theological preferences, or to make their laws easier, or just to maintain control over their specific congregations, it's viewed as a crime of the pen.
But Dr. Waleed reads, "Write the book with their hands," and see something entirely different, doesn't he? He doesn't see a crime of the pen.
No, not at all. He sees a crime of the shovel almost.
A crime of the shovel. That's a great image.
He sees geographic engineering. Dr. Waleed emphasizes that this wasn't mere textual forgery. It was the deliberate, calculated creation of an alternate reality.
So they weren't just editing a book.
Right. He argues that the hands that wrote the book were actively engaged in moving the geographical pen. They were systematically transferring the holiness, the sacred cognitive weight we talked about, from a very specific true location to a completely different fabricated geography.
Okay, I have to push back here because the logistics of that are just staggering.
They are massive, yes.
Why would anyone go to the trouble of faking the geography of an entire religion? I mean, the verse mentions doing it for a small price. What is the price that justifies hacking the geographical memory of humanity?
Well, according to Dr. Waleed's framework, this small price isn't, a literal bag of silver coins. He interprets it as material sovereignty and earthly quotas.
Earthly quotas, like land and resources.
Yes. Think about the power of a sacred center. A sacred center draws pilgrims, it draws wealth, it draws absolute authority.
Because everyone believes God is uniquely present there.
Exactly. So if the true sacred center is located in a place you do not control, you have no power.
Ah, I see where this is going. So you move the center to your own backyard.
Precisely. By moving the narrative of holiness to a geography they already controlled, these manipulators secured total dominion over the people and the resources tied to that holiness.
It is the ultimate monopoly.
It really is. You don't have to conquer the Holy Land with armies if you can just convince everyone that your land was the Holy Land all along.
Man, it's like stealing the deed to a mansion. But instead of trying to physically occupy the mansion and fight the owners, you just physically unscrew the address numbers from the porch.
Right.
You walk to a cheaper neighborhood that you already own, nail those numbers to your own front door, and tell the world, look, I own the sacred mansion.
That is precisely the mechanism Dr. Waleed is describing. That's exactly it.
It's just brilliant in its deviousness.
And the text he analyzes, goes further to describe the profound psychological fallout of this crime. Because, as Dr. Waleed points out, to pull this off, the perpetrators had to create a massive parallel history.
Well, yeah, they couldn't just move the address. They had to invent centuries of backstory to legitimize the new address.
Exactly, because eventually someone is going to ask, hey, wasn't the Holy River supposed to be right here? Where did the mountain go?
Right. I thought there was a giant valley here, but it's just sand.
So they wrote the book with their hands to explain it all away, to make the fake geography fit the narrative.
And what happens to the people who did this? The people who wrote the fake history?
Dr. Waleed brings in the subsequent verses to show the ultimate arrogance of these manipulators. The text says, these are the people who claim, the fire will not touch us except for a few numbered days.
Oh, the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card.
Yes. Dr. Waleed asserts that by engineering this fake geography, they also engineered an exclusive, untouchable spiritual status for themselves.
Because they're in charge of the map.
Exactly. They convinced themselves and their followers that because they held the keys to the sacred geography, even though they fully knew it was a forgery, they were the chosen people.
So they felt totally immune.
Right. They believed they were immune to the cosmic consequences of their actions. It created an impenetrable cognitive bubble.
And Dr. Waleed calls this group the cognitive lobby, right?
Yes, the cognitive lobby. It is a brilliant term for what he is describing.
It really is. It wasn't just a few rogue scribes in a cave.
No, it was an institution, a coordinated generational effort to lobby the human mind, to slowly condition the population to accept the fake map as the real one.
You know, it makes you think about how information is manipulated today.
Oh, absolutely. The parallels are definitely there.
For you listening, think about how modern lobbies work. Think about whoever controls the news algorithms, or how historical events are framed depending on who is funding the textbook.
It's all about framing.
Whoever controls the narrative controls reality. But Dr. Waleed is showing us that this kind of narrative control isn't a modern phenomenon born of the internet. It is an ancient, calculated tactic.
And it's incredibly effective.
Right. The cognitive lobby ensures that anyone genuinely searching for the truth will simply wander into the desert looking for an address that doesn't actually exist there.
And that wandering really is the tragedy of the fake map. People are pouring their sincere faith into a void.
Okay, so this brings up the most massive question. If the location was moved, if the cognitive lobby successfully unscrewed the house numbers and put them in the wrong neighborhood, where does Dr. Waleed say the events actually took place?
The real address.
Exactly. If we strip away the forgery, where's the true house located?
This is where Dr. Waleed introduces the concept of spatial symmetry and what he calls the triangle of prophets.
Okay, triangle of prophets. I'm intrigued.
And what's fascinating is that to find this true location, he doesn't use archaeological guesswork. He doesn't go digging in the dirt.
He uses a text.
Yes. He uses his tool of linguistic mechanics on the text itself, treating the words as strict geographic boundary markers.
He focuses intensely on the verses detailing the ancient covenants, right? Specifically verses 84 and 85 of Al-Baqarah.
Yes. Let's look at what the text actually says. And when we took your covenant, saying, do not shed each other's blood or evict one another from your homes, then you acknowledged it and you were witnesses. Then you are those same ones who kill one another and evict a party of your people from their homes.
Now, traditionally, if I'm reading that in a Sunday school or a religious study class, I'm reading a moral condemnation.
A behavioral lesson.
Right. God gave you rules, don't kill, don't steal land, and you broke them. It's a critique of their actions.
But applying cognitive geography, Dr. Waleed refuses to read it merely as a moral lesson. He reads it objectively as a historical and spatial ledger.
A ledger? How so?
He asks a series of very grounding questions. Who specifically are the people being addressed here? Historically, it's the children of Israel. Who are the specific victims of this violence? Who exactly are the ones being evicted? Dr. Waleed argues that all of these groups, the perpetrators, the victims, and crucially, the prophets sent to warn them, existed in the exact same geographical footprint.
Wait, let me stop you there. Because traditional history puts a lot of distance between these events.
A huge amount of distance.
I mean, Moses is in Egypt on the Sinai. Jesus is in Galilee and Jerusalem. Muhammad is way down in the Arabian Peninsula. That is a massive spread of land across completely different eras.
That is the standard compartmentalized view of history. But Dr. Waleed argues that this sprawling, disconnected map is the very parallel history engineered by the cognitive lobby.
So the distances are part of the lie.
Yes. To prove this, he focuses on a repeated phrase in these verses, whenever a messenger came to you.
Whenever a messenger came to you. Okay, how does that prove they were in the same place?
Dr. Waleed argues this phrasing implies strict spatial continuity. Think about the mechanics of the phrase. It doesn't say, whenever a messenger was sent to a different nation across the sea.
Right. It says came to you.
Exactly. The you is constant. Therefore, the geography must be constant. According to Dr. Waleed, the messengers didn't have to cross oceans or traverse thousands of miles of empty desert to find these people.
They were just right there.
They appeared in the exact same continuous theater of operations.
So Dr. Waleed is saying Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, they were basically in the same room.
Historically and geographically speaking, yes. They were deployed to the exact same geographical zone to confront the exact same ongoing cognitive lobby.
That is staggering. I mean, it completely shrinks the ancient world. So where is this room? Does Dr. Waleed actually draw borders for this zone?
He does. He calls it the zone of testimony. And he defines it as a very specific geographical triangle.
Okay, let's map it out. Where are the points of this triangle?
One major point of this triangle is in southern Jordan. Dr. Waleed identifies this southern Jordanian region with terms found in the text like the East, Petra, or the desert.
Okay, southern Jordan, the East, that's point one.
And the other major point of this axis is in northern Palestine, which he identifies as the original Baka, or Jerusalem, the West.
Baka being an ancient foundational name often associated with the sacred center.
Exactly.
So we have this tension, this tight geographic string pulled taut between southern Jordan in the east and northern Palestine in the west.
Yes. And Dr. Waleed's map reveals that the entire multi-generational struggle, the shedding of blood, the eviction from homes, the arrival of every major messenger, all it happened contained within this highly specific, localized triangle.
For you listening, just take a second to visualize how completely this changes the way we picture ancient history.
It really flips the script.
I think almost all of us, regardless of our backgrounds, imagine these narratives as isolated cinematic universes.
That's a good comparison.
Like Moses is doing his thing with the sea in one movie.
Yeah.
Centuries pass, the camera pans way over to a different landscape, and there's Jesus. More centuries pass, the camera pans to a totally different distant peninsula, and there's Muhammad. They feel like entirely different franchises.
Which is exactly how a cognitive lobby would want you to view it, according to Dr. Waleed.
Because it keeps everything fragmented.
Right. If you keep the prophets separated by thousands of miles in the historical imagination, you obscure the fact that they were all fighting the exact same geographical lie.
But Dr. Waleed puts them all in the same dusty arena. He is saying Muhammad was not operating in historical or geographical isolation down in the Hijaz.
Far from it. In Dr. Waleed's framework, Muhammad is the completing pillar in this precise Jordanian-Palestinian arena.
He's the final piece of that specific puzzle.
Yes. He is standing in the exact same zone of testimony, fighting the exact same battle for geographic and spiritual truth as Moses and Jesus did before him. The lobby hadn't changed, the location hadn't changed, only the messenger changed.
Okay, if I accept Dr. Waleed's premise for a moment, that the map was broken by the lobby and that the true events all happened in this specific triangle between Jordan and Palestine, how does the text actually fix the problem?
That is the crucial next step.
Right, because if you are a believer standing in this zone, how do the words act as a compass to point you back to the right address? And this brings us to what I think is the most mind-bending linguistic revelation in Dr. Waleed's entire theory.
It truly is the fulcrum of his entire thesis. This is where we see his tool of linguistic mechanics operating at its absolute highest level.
Okay, lay it on us.
We have to look at the Arabic word shart, spelled sheen, ta, ra.
Shout. And this word is famously used in verse 144 of Al-Baqarah, which is the command regarding the Qibla, right? The direction of prayer.
Yes, exactly.
The standard translation that almost everyone uses is something like, turn your face towards the sacred mosque.
Yes, towards. It is universally understood as a simple directional preposition. A blind direction. Look that way. Point your body in that physical direction.
But Dr. Waleed completely rejects the word towards, doesn't he?
He rejects it utterly. Dr. Waleed argues that translating shot to or merely as towards completely guts the mechanical function of the word.
It weakens it.
Yes. He looks at the deep Arabic roots and translates shad, not as a static direction, but as a dynamic, balancing action. He translates it as having or sharing in Arabic, al-mushatara.
Having or sharing. Okay, I'm having a hard time visualizing this. How do you turn your face having a mosque? That doesn't make grammatical sense in English. What does that physical action actually look like?
To understand it, Dr. Waleed introduces the concept of cognitive sharing. To turn your face shat, the sacred mosque, is not just looking blindly at a building. It is a deliberate, highly conscious balancing act.
Balancing what?
It is the act of taking two distinct, severed halves of reality and matching them together to reveal the whole truth.
Okay, what are the two halves? What was severed by the lobby?
According to Dr. Waleed, the first half is the science LM. This is the recorded truth. It is the knowledge preserved in the divine book, the theoretical understanding, the uncorrupted history held in the mind and the heart.
So it's the data, the theory.
Yes. And the second half is the ILM. This is the actual physical geographic location on the earth, the tangible spatial reality that you can look at with your physical eyes.
The science in the eye. Okay, so if I am tracking with Dr. Waleed's framework here, the command to turn shut the mosque is literally an ancient form of two-factor authentication.
Oh, there's a phenomenal modern analogy, yes.
Think about it. When you log into a highly secure bank account, knowing the password, which is the science, the text in your head is not enough.
Right, because anyone could steal a password.
Exactly. The system says, great, you have the theoretical knowledge, but someone could have stolen that. Now, prove you hold the physical device.
You need the phone in your hand.
Yes.
Yeah.
You need the code sent to your physical phone in your hand, which is the I, the tangible geography. You need both halves to match. You need the shatra to unlock the truth.
That is exactly how Dr. Waleed views it. The text is the password. The geography is the device. If you have the true text, but you are standing in the wrong place, facing the wrong way, the truth doesn't unlock.
The password fails because you don't have the device.
Exactly. And if you are standing in the right place but holding a corrupted text, it doesn't unlock either.
Because you have the device, but you forgot the password.
Right. Turning Shak, the sacred mosque, is the supreme act of bringing the password and the device together. It is aligning the internal science with the external eye.
And what's so fascinating is that, according to Dr. Waleed, this wasn't just a quiet spiritual meditation for the ancient believers.
No, not at all.
This command to perform this cognitive sharing was an act of open, aggressive rebellion against the establishment.
It was a declaration of sovereign war against the cognitive lobby. Think about it. What was the lobby's original crime? They wrote the book with their hands.
They broke the map.
Yes. They had deliberately separated the text from the true location. They intentionally broke the two-factor authentication so they could maintain control over a fake map.
So when the command comes down to turn shut the sacred mosque, it is basically a command to bypass the lobby's fake firewall and reconnect the authentic halves.
Exactly. And Dr. Waleed notes that the Quranic text explicitly states that the people of the book knew this truth.
The lobby knew what they were doing.
Yes. The scholars of the lobby knew the original coordinates existed, but they actively concealed them. So performing the shatter was a sovereign command to reclaim the physical truth that had been stolen.
It was a visible declaration.
A highly visible one. It was saying to the lobby, we have the original password, we know where the original device is, and we are now pointing the two at each other.
Man, it is so deeply subversive. They are literally hacking the map back to its original pristine state in real time.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
But this leads to a massive logistical question for me. If Shat is this act of balancing the text and the geography on a cosmic scale, where is the fulcrum of this scale?
The fulcrum, right?
Where do you physically have to stand to achieve this balance? Because you can't just stand randomly in the desert and balance two massive concepts. Dr. Waleed has a literal physical coordinate for this, doesn't he?
He absolutely does. And this forms the next major pillar of his theory. It revolves entirely around his radical interpretation of verse 143.
Which says what?
It says, thus we made you a middle nation, that you will be witnesses over the people.
A middle nation. The Arabic word is wasat. Now, in traditional scholarship, how is wasat usually interpreted?
Almost universally, middle is interpreted metaphorically as ideological moderation.
Like, don't be too extreme.
Right. A nation that avoids the extremes of previous religious groups, balanced in its social practices, temperate in its theology, the middle path.
But we've established that in Dr. Waleed's geography of truth, nothing is merely a metaphor.
Right. Dr. Waleed strips away the metaphor completely and takes middle, entirely literally. It is not about sociological moderation. It is about spatial centering.
Spatial centering. So we are back to the map. Where is the center? Where is the physical fulcrum?
Dr. Waleed places this middle nation geographically precisely within that zone of testimony we discussed earlier.
In that Jordan-Palestine triangle.
Yes. They are physically wedged between the two opposing geographic forces. On one side, to the east, you have the deviators, which Dr. Waleed identifies with the Meccans, with Petra, with the deep desert.
Okay.
This is the realm of the fabricated map, the domain of the cognitive lobby.
The fake address.
Yes. And on the other side, to the west, you have the witnessing messenger, which he identifies as Baka, Jerusalem, the true, original ancient center. The middle nation is standing right in between them.
Okay, so they are physically located between the fake map to the east and the true map to the west. But why is standing physically in the middle so critical to Dr. Waleed's framework?
It's essential for achieving true understanding.
Right, but what does being the fulcrum actually achieve in terms of human understanding? Why can't you just stand in the west and be done with it?
To explain why the center is vital, Dr. Waleed unpacks what I consider to be his most brilliant philosophical and geographical equation. He calls it the anatomy of certainty.
The anatomy of certainty.
Yes. He breaks down the Arabic concept of yaqeen, which means absolute, unshakable certainty, and he divides it into 3 distinct geographically bound stages.
I really want to dig into this. Walk us through Dr. Waleed's 3 certainties, because this is where the psychology really meets the geography.
Okay, the first stage is ilm al-yaqeen, which translates to the knowledge of certainty. According to Dr. Waleed's spatial map, this resides in the west, in Baka or Jerusalem.
And what does that represent?
This represents pure theory. It is the recorded divine science, the authentic text before it was tampered with by the scribes.
So it's the password in our 2FA analogy. You have the pristine knowledge, you know it's true in your mind.
Correct. But knowledge alone isn't full realization. The second stage is an-yaqeen, which translates to the eye of certainty.
The eye.
Yes. Dr. Waleed argues this resides in the east, in Mecca or the desert. This is the visual proof, the physical observation of reality, the tangible things you can touch and see.
It's the physical device, the screen you are looking at.
Exactly. Now remember what the cognitive lobby did. They separated these two. They fractured reality.
So they pulled the east and west apart conceptually.
Yes. So you had populations looking intensely at the east, the eye performing rituals, seeing physical monuments, but holding a corrupted or completely wrong text.
They had the device, but a bad password.
Right. Or, conversely, you had scholars holding the pristine text, the knowledge, but facing the wrong geographic direction.
So nobody ever had full certainty. They just had fragments, they had passwords for devices they didn't own, and devices they couldn't unlock.
Which brings us to the third, final, and most crucial certainty. Haq al-yaqeen, the right of certainty, or the truth of certainty.
The right of certainty. How do you get that?
Dr. Waleed argues that this ultimate enlightened state is only achieved when the middle nation, standing in the literal spatial center, connects the two.
When they act as the fulcrum.
Yes, when the middle nation acts as the shat, the balancer aligning the knowledge of the west with the physical eye of the east.
So, Haq al-yaqeen isn't a place you can visit. It's an event. It's the cognitive spark that happens when the 2 live wires finally touch.
Yes, that's exactly it. And the middle nation are the ones holding the wires. Because they are spatially centered, and only because they are centered, they can perceive both the theory and the physical proof.
And by doing so, they become the witnesses over the people, exactly as the verse commands. They testify to the complete, unified truth that the lobby tried to destroy.
Exactly.
That is a staggering visualization. Dr. Waleed is essentially drawing a massive, invisible cognitive scale over the entire Middle East.
It's a beautiful image.
If you stand in the middle, you weigh the theory on one side, the physical proof on the other, and by aligning them, you achieve absolute reality. But it's not a smooth landscape, is it? He points out a very specific geographic feature that acts as a roadblock.
Yes, he does. Dr. Waleed notes a fascinating geographic barzakh.
Barzakh.
The word barzakh means a barrier or partition. And he identifies this physical barrier right in the middle of this zone as the Dead Sea.
The Dead Sea. The lowest point of dry land on Earth. A hypersaline body of water where absolutely nothing can live.
Precisely. In Dr. Waleed's framework, the Dead Sea is not just an interesting geological anomaly. It serves a profound cognitive function.
Like it actually means something to the human mind.
Yes. He views it as the literal point of cognitive collapse. It represents the lowest point of deviation for those who stubbornly follow the cognitive lobby.
Okay, I need a visual for how that works. Why does following the fake map lead you to a salt lake?
Think of it like a maze. If you are navigating a maze using a map drawn by someone who wants you to fail, you don't just wander forever.
Right, you eventually hit a wall.
Eventually you hit a dead end so severe, a brick wall so high, that your brain breaks. You realize the map is a lie. The Dead Sea is that dead end. It is the physical manifestation of the cognitive lobby's failure. It is the barren, lifeless end of the fake map.
So if you blindly follow the lobby's manipulated directions, you don't find the sacred center of life. You end up at the lowest, deadest place on Earth, suffering total cognitive collapse.
That is his argument. The geography punishes the lie.
For you listening, I want you to think about your own right of certainty for a moment. Think about how we only truly, deeply understand something in life when our book knowledge, the science we learn in school or read in an article, aligns perfectly with our lived experience, the I, what we actually witness in the real world.
It's a rare feeling when it happens.
It is. When those two don't match, what happens? We feel cognitive dissonance. We feel anxious, lost, deeply unsettled. Dr. Waleed is saying that an entire ancient civilization was deliberately plunged into geographic and spiritual cognitive dissonance because a powerful lobby severed the connection.
And establishing this physical balance, finding the true center to achieve haq al-yaqeen, was the ultimate existential test for the ancient believers.
And according to Dr. Waleed, when that test finally reached its boiling point, it sparked an absolute societal earthquake.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us to the ultimate crisis moment. If the believers are standing in the middle, balancing the scale, what happens when they are ordered to move? Let's explore Dr. Waleed's analysis of the shifting of the Qibla.
To understand the magnitude of this earthquake, we have to look closely at Dr. Waleed's analysis of verse 142. This verse details the sudden shifting of the Qibla, the direction of prayer.
The text reads, "The fools among the people will say, what has turned them away from their Qibla, which they used to face?"
Exactly. Now remember, in Dr. Waleed's spatial framework, this is never just about changing the direction you face during a ritual.
It's not just turning on a prayer mat.
It is not a minor liturgical adjustment. It is a mass geographic rebellion. He posits that the prophets Abraham and Muhammad walked the exact same literal path, abandoning the east and heading west.
Abandoning the east, which he identifies as the desert, the fabricated center built by the lobby, and heading west, back to Bakka, Jerusalem, the true ancient center.
Yes. According to Dr. Waleed's historical reading, Abraham originally raised the foundations in the house and set his station as a point of connection. He established the true original Qibla in the west.
So it started in the west.
Yes. But over vast stretches of time, as the cognitive lobby relentlessly went to work, the Israelites and Christians fractured.
They lost the signal.
Because they started clinging to directions manufactured by their own hands. They were facing the artificial addresses, the fake pins on the map created by the lobby to consolidate power in the East.
And this is the hardest part about human psychology, right? If a lie goes on long enough, it becomes tradition.
That is the real danger.
The people had become completely accustomed to the artificial Qibla. Because of generations of geographic forgery, the fake map felt deeply, comfortably real to them. It was where their parents prayed, where their grandparents prayed.
Precisely. So when the command comes to Muhammad to radically shift the Qibla back to the original ancient Bakka in the west, it wasn't just a physical turn. Dr. Waleed argues it was a seismic psychological event. It was a geographic revolution.
Imagine the trauma of that. You are being told that you have been pouring your soul toward a counterfeit monument your entire life.
It would be devastating.
And not just you, but your ancestors. And now you are commanded to physically turn your back on everything you know and face a completely different direction. It is a total dismantling of identity. It's no wonder the verse explicitly calls the detractors the fools among the people. They were freaking out. The cognitive dissonance must have been unbearable.
Which is why Dr. Waleed brilliantly calls this moment the thermometer of truth.
The thermometer of truth. I love that phrasing. How does it measure them?
It ruthlessly separated the true followers of the messenger from those who were merely attached to cultural tradition.
It sorted them out immediately.
Yes. The true followers were willing to suffer the psychological shock of shattering the illusion. They were willing to align the science with the I, even if it meant admitting they had been wrong.
And the others.
But others, Dr. Waleed notes, literally turned back on their heels.
Yeah.
They chose the false geography of the East, what he aligns with Petra, the desert, and personal desires.
Because it was easier.
Because it was comfortable, it was familiar, and it was the reality the lobby had trained them to revere.
They chose the fake map because the fake map was easier than facing the painful cognitive dissonance of the truth. They chose the comfortable lie over the disorienting truth.
This directly ties into Dr. Waleed's overarching concept of the paired truth.
The paired truth.
Yes. He emphasizes that the truth in this framework isn't just a warm spiritual feeling you hold safely in your heart while conforming to the world around you. It is inextricably physical.
You have to act on it.
It requires the physical eye looking in the correct physical geographic direction. You absolutely cannot divorce the spiritual intent from the spatial reality. Ignoring this paired reality, retreating to the fake map, leads to terrible consequences.
It goes back to our 2FA analogy. You can't just memorize the password and feel good about it. You have to do the hard work of looking at the physical device.
Right. The password isn't enough on its own.
If you refuse to look at the device because it's inconvenient, you are permanently locked out of reality, which transitions us to the final and perhaps most intense part of Dr. Waleed's theory.
Yes, the consequences.
We know what happens to the believers who find the balance, but what is the consequence, according to his framework, for the cognitive lobby? What happens to the architects of the fake map who knew the truth but actively hid it from the world?
That takes us to Dr. Waleed's complex breakdown of verse 159 and his concept of the cosmic curse.
The verse reads, "Those who conceal what we sent down of clear proofs and guidance after we made it clear for the people in the scripture, those are cursed by God and cursed by the cursers."
Yes.
Now let's be honest. When modern readers hear the word curse, especially in an ancient religious context, we immediately think of magic.
Right, like a spell.
We think of a hex, a supernatural spell, frogs falling from the sky, or a plague of locusts.
That is the mythological reading, which Dr. Waleed aggressively avoids.
Because of his linguistic mechanics.
True to his method, he defines this curse not as a magical hex, but as an architectural and mechanical failure. He defines the curse fundamentally as expulsion from the balance.
Expulsion from the balance. Let's dig deeply into that. What exact balance are they expelled from?
They are expelled from the balance of Shad, the balance achieved by the middle nation.
Okay, so the fulcrum we talked about.
Yes. By knowing deep down that Baka was the original center holding the science, but actively, maliciously concealing this geographic testimony from the people to maintain their earthly quotas, the perpetrators broke the scale.
They ruined the mechanism.
They removed themselves from what Dr. Waleed poetically calls the mercy of clarity.
The mercy of clarity. The peace of mind that comes from knowing your map is accurate and your reality is true. So if they are expelled from this balance, where do they go? What is the curse actually like?
They wander into a permanent cognitive maze. By breaking the map to control others, they fundamentally broke their own ability to perceive reality. They are locked in the dark.
They trap themselves in their own lie.
But Dr. Waleed's analysis gets even deeper and more terrifying here, because he argues the lobby's crime didn't stop at geography. To maintain the lie, they didn't just break the spatial map, they had to break the clock.
The clock? Wait, how did they manipulate time? How does time factor into a geographic forgery?
Dr. Waleed introduces the Quranic concept of nasi. This refers to the twisting, postponing, or altering of the calendar, the deliberate manipulation of sacred months and ancient timekeeping.
Okay, I need to pause you here because the implications of this are absolutely mind-blowing. Let me see if I'm tracking this.
Okay, go ahead.
The cognitive lobby realizes that simply moving the geographic pin isn't enough to sustain the lie forever.
Why?
Why? Because if they just moved the pin, eventually the natural world wouldn't line up.
Exactly.
The stars wouldn't match the historical accounts. The seasons wouldn't align with the harvest rituals described in the ancient texts. A smart person would look up at the sky, look at the text, and realize, wait, we're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
The physical universe would expose the geographic lie.
So to cover their tracks, the lobby had to hack the calendar too. They had to introduce leap months, shift the start of the year, warp the perception of time itself so that the rituals seemed to match the fake location.
They had to synchronize the fake map with fake time.
It's like trying to watch a live broadcast where the video is out of sync with the audio, so the network artificially slows down the audio feed to make it look like the anchor's lips are matching the words, even though the whole thing's delayed.
That is a brilliant analogy. They broke the compass and the clock. By manipulating Nazis, they created a massive temporal crookedness.
Crookedness.
They shifted the dates so that even if someone had a slight inkling of the truth, the timing of the spiritual rituals wouldn't match the physical geography. It was a deeply calculated, multi-dimensional strategy to ensure the populace couldn't see the truth, even if they were standing right in front of it.
It is the ultimate totalitarian gaslighting operation. You don't know where you are on the map, and you don't know what time it actually is. You are completely, utterly dependent on the cognitive lobby to tell you what reality is today.
It's terrifying, really.
But Dr. Waleed points out a fatal flaw in the lobby's grand design, doesn't he? A way out of the maze that they couldn't control.
He does, and it is the most beautifully poetic part of his entire framework. Dr. Waleed points out that while the cognitive lobby is incredibly powerful, they can manipulate human maps, they can rewrite human history books, they can twist human calendars. They cannot manipulate the cosmos.
They can't hack the universe.
Exactly. The sun, the moon, the equinoxes, the solstices. Dr. Waleed argues that the universe itself acts as a massive, unhackable, cosmic calibration.
Cosmic calibration. I love that.
The celestial bodies follow a divine, unalterable math. They rise and set, marking true time and true direction, completely regardless of what the lobby writes with their corrupt hands. The cosmos constantly, silently exposes their lies.
That is an incredible image. The lobby is constantly scrambling to hold up this massive, fake painted backdrop of reality, desperately trying to keep the populace looking at the canvas, while the real blazing sun is rising right behind it, burning a hole straight through the illusion.
And that is the curse. The curse is the exhausting, eternal, failing battle against reality.
Wow.
Which leads to Dr. Waleed's final synthesis, what he terms the sequence of cognitive sovereignty. He argues that the conflict described in these verses, the shifting of the Qibla, the arguments with the fools, is not just an ancient historical squabble over a piece of land.
It's bigger than that.
It is the ultimate, cosmic, ongoing victory of recorded truth. The pure, uncorrupted text over linguistic and geographic forgery.
It is the ultimate system restore program executing itself, overriding the lobby's malware.
Precisely. Sovereignty, in Dr. Waleed's view, does not belong to the powerful men who write fake deeds with their hands. It doesn't belong to the loudest lobby.
Who does it belong to, then?
True sovereignty belongs only to those who maintain the exact balance of the scale, those who possess the courage to align the internal science with the external eye, those who demand the right of certainty.
Okay, let's take a deep breath, because that was a profound, demanding journey through Dr. Khaled Waleed's mind. We have covered an immense amount of ground today.
We really have.
Let's do a rapid recap of the entire geography of truth framework we just explored, just to cement the architecture of this theory.
Sounds good. We began with the initial crime, a powerful cognitive lobby actively engineering an alternate reality.
Right, they moved the geographic pin to secure earthly power and created a parallel history where they were untouchable by the consequences.
We then searched for the real map, Dr. Waleed's zone of testimony, a continuous geographic triangle stretching from Jordan to Palestine, arguing that Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad all stood in the exact same arena, fighting the exact same lobby.
Then we unpacked the linguistic key to the map, the word shat, redefining it not as a blind direction, but as the act of having or balancing of the authentic text, the science, with the true geography, the eye.
We found the physical fulcrum, the middle nation, not as a modern ideology, but spatially centered between the fake East and true West.
And standing there achieves the ultimate right of certainty, avoiding the dead-end cognitive collapse represented by the Dead Sea.
We witnessed the geographic revolution, the Qibla shift, acting as a thermometer of truth. It forced believers to endure the trauma of turning westward, abandoning the fake, familiar map of the East to reclaim the paired truth.
And finally, we explored the cosmic curse, how the lobby broke the compass and the clock through geographic forgery and time manipulation, only to be constantly, inevitably exposed by the unalterable, unhackable calibration of the cosmos. It is a stunning, interlocking architecture of thought.
It truly is. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought directly inspired by Dr. Waleed's framework.
Oh, please do.
Dr. Waleed shows us that truth isn't just a vague idea floating out there in the ether. It has coordinates. It has a physical address. It demands absolute alignment between what you know in your head and what you witness in reality.
It requires both factors of the authentication.
Exactly. So in your own life, when you are handed a truth by a modern cognitive lobby, whether that is a curated narrative on the evening news, a sanitized version of history in a textbook, or an algorithm feeding you a specific reality on your screen, ask yourself a fundamental question.
What's the question?
Am I just blindly facing the direction they wrote with their own hands? Or am I actively demanding the right of certainty? Am I doing the hard, uncomfortable work of making sure the science in my head actually matches the physical reality standing right in front of my own eyes?
Because if you don't demand that certainty, if you refuse to look at the device, you might just find yourself following a map where the red pin has been quietly moved, wandering in a cognitive maze built by someone else. Thank you for joining us on this incredibly deep dive into Dr. Khaled Waleed's mind-expanding theories. We wish you clear skies and, above all, accurate maps on your own learning journey. Keep questioning the address.